From costs. As you look at this module, you're going to be able to see some things that are kind of related to the stuff we were doing before. But today we're going to look at types of costs, fixed costs, variable costs, and total costs. As you look at this one, we're going to also see how those costs get turned into actual curves that we can measure. Today, the production function to cost curves is the first slide. Yesterday, we looked at diminishing marginal returns, and we said, hey, in the short run, there's variable inputs, there's fixed inputs. What happens when we actually hire somebody to do the work? What we're going to end up with is a bunch of numbers that basically are going to create this graph over here. We're going to look at the price on the side here, looking at the cost of the unit, and then we're going to look at the quantity as we go through this process. The first thing we're going to get are total costs. Total costs are made up of fixed costs and variable costs. Your fixed costs are costs that don't change as we add in input. Those are going to be things like the utilities at your place of business. You are going to have the heat, you're going to have electricity, you're going to have those things. Those are going to be fixed no matter what. Even if you produce zero output, the fixed costs are going to be fixed. Then we're going to move on to variable costs. Now, variable costs are a little more interesting because variable costs are things like your hourly wage employees. If you have more people that are hourly wage earners, you're going to have more variable costs. But as you need less people, you can delete those variable costs a little bit. At least you have some control. Fixed cost, even at zero output, you got to have those fixed costs going. But for variable costs, you can change those as you go through your day or your year or whatever. Like right now it's Corona time, so maybe you're getting rid of some of those variable costs because you don't have to have as many employees, but you still have to have the lights on, you still have the heat on, you still have to have all those things that are going to go with the business that you're associating with. Total costs then are simply our fixed cost plus our variable cost. So when you see a little equation like this, your total cost plus your fixed cost, or are your fixed cost plus your variable cost. All right, so total cost equals fixed cost plus variable. Now in econ, we always are looking at the margin, right? Marginal cost is the additional cost of producing one more unit of output. So really what we want to do is we want to see the change in that total cost divided by the change in the quantity. So as I add one more unit, how much did it cost me as a business owner to have that unit produced? Your marginal cost curve then is going to be the one that drives the bus. Your marginal cost curve looks like a big old Nike swoosh. At the beginning, it's going to come down. As you start to produce more and you hire more labor, etc., due to specialization in tasks, you are going to see those costs come down at the beginning and then rapidly rise as you add more of a variable input into that fixed input. That we talked about that yesterday. Now, the other options or the other things we're going to look at here is our average costs. Now, your average total cost, all we're going to do is we're going to take the total cost and divide it by the quantity. That's going to give us this average total cost. It's going to come down at the beginning and it's going to stop. Its lowest point is going to be at our marginal cost curve. And it's going to stop there and then start to go back up. Your marginal cost is your per unit cost. So because our marginal costs are lower here, the per unit cost is low, it's going to pull our average total cost down. But as our marginal cost or our per unit cost starts to increase, it's going to start pulling our average total cost up. If you think of the marginal cost as your test grades, if you have a low test grade, it's going to start bringing your average down. A low test grade brings your average down, and then all of a sudden you get a good test grade. It starts pulling your average back up. So your average total costs are going to bottom out right where our marginal cost line is. Same thing for variable costs. Variable costs are no different. They're just measuring a different part of it, just the variable portion. So your variable costs are going to come down until it hits your marginal cost line, and then it's going to start coming up again. It will not touch your average total cost curve, but it's going to slowly but surely creep up on it. That's because our average fixed costs are being slowly averaged into nothing. If you think about your fixed cost is something that you are going to have regardless of how much you produce. But as you produce more of it, that fixed cost is going to be slowly but surely averaged away. if you think about that fixed cost being averaged away, the first unit's very expensive because you have to pay for all the lights, all the water, all the heat with that first unit. But as you make the second unit, the third unit, the fourth unit, the fifth unit, the sixth unit, eventually that gets averaged, that same cost is getting averaged over the whole bunch of units that you're making. The difference between my average total cost and my average variable cost is my average fixed cost, which is why my average variable cost is going to creep up on my total, but it's never really going to touch it. It's going to get super close as my total fixed costs get averaged into nothing. My total costs then are my total fixed cost plus my total variable cost. Therefore, my average total cost is simply my average fixed cost plus my average variable cost. Your average total costs are going to be smiley face looking. If this was class, we'd put on the board right now my Nike swoosh sign coming through right here through the bottom of my average total cost. So that Nike swoosh is what's going to be causing it to come down and then back up of my marginal cost. And then my average variable cost, because it is sort of like smirky looking and getting closer and closer to average total cost, it looks like Dick Cheney's face. Dick Cheney always had a little smirk going on because he knew he was really in charge and not George Bush. So his little smirk here is slowly but surely getting closer and closer and closer to that average total cost smiley face that we had before. So marginal cost is a Nike swoosh. Average total cost is a smiley face. Average variable cost is Dick Cheney's face. As you look at the difference then, marginal costs and average costs, marginal costs are really what's going to make everything happen. That per unit cost that we have, or the next one we're making, is going to bring things down and then bring things back up. And then where these lines cross are going to become super important as we get to the next part of our unit. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to look at your packet. We're going to end up graphing out some of these costs, calculating some of these costs, and you're going to get a graph that looks something similar to this guy right here. All right, till next time.